It is the unwritten rule of nature that you do not turn on your own mother. It is a bond that is supposed to be sacred, unbreakable, and protected at all costs. But yesterday, inside a tense Oregon courtroom, that rule was shattered into a million pieces. Caryn Chandler called her son, Connor, to the witness stand, expecting him to be her savior. She expected him to look at the jury and paint a picture of a loving, naive woman who was just caught in the crossfire of the Roloff family drama. Instead, he buried her. In a testimony that left the judge speechless and had Caryn literally screaming in protest from the defense table, Connor Chandler revealed the dark secrets his mother forced him to keep. He didn't just talk about the farm or the feud. He talked about bribes, threats, and hidden evidence she tried to stash at his apartment to keep away from the FBI. This is the story of the witness who flipped the script, and the moment Caryn realized her own flesh and blood had just handed the prosecution the final nail for her coffin. Welcome back to LPBW Update, your #1 source for the most in-depth, behind-the-scenes, and unfiltered analysis of the Roloff family saga. If you are shocked by the twists and turns of this legal battle, make sure you hit that like button right now. It helps us get this truth out to more people. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss our next video where we are going to break down the specific digital files mentioned in this testimony. Trust me, you need to be subscribed for that. Now, let's get into the courtroom. To understand the magnitude of what happened yesterday, we have to look at the desperate position Caryn Chandler found herself in. For weeks, the prosecution has been building a mountain of evidence suggesting that Caryn wasn't just Matt Roloff's girlfriend, but his active partner in what they are calling a massive scheme to defraud the Roloff family trust. We have heard about the double sets of books, the unexplained cash withdrawals, and the mysterious security system that was allegedly used to spy on Amy and the kids. Caryn's defense team, some of the most expensive lawyers in Oregon, had a very specific strategy. They wanted to paint Caryn as the naive victim. Their narrative was simple. Caryn is just a farm manager. She is just a girlfriend. She does what Matt tells her to do. They argued that she doesn't understand complex accounting, she doesn't know about asset liquidation, and she certainly wouldn't have the malice to cut Zach and Jeremy out of their inheritance. They wanted the jury to see her as a sweet grandmother figure who was being unfairly targeted because she happens to be dating the boss. But the prosecution had done a good job of dismantling that image. They showed emails where Caryn was directing financial transfers. They showed texts where she spoke disparagingly about Amy. Caryn's image was crumbling. Her lawyers knew they needed a Hail Mary. They needed a character witness. They needed someone who could stand up under oath and humanize her. They needed someone to look the jury in the eye and say, my mother is a good person who would never break the law. And who better to do that than her own son, Connor? This was the gamble of the century. Everyone who follows Little People, Big World knows that Caryn and Connor have had a very rocky, public, and difficult relationship. There have been legal issues in the past, there have been periods of estrangement, and there have been headlines that no mother wants to read. However, in recent months, sources close to the Chandlers have reported a sudden reconciliation. We heard reports of Caryn helping Connor financially, paying for legal fees, and helping him get back on his feet. The defense team looked at this and saw an opportunity. They thought that by subpoenaing Connor, they could show a redemption arc. They thought Connor would be grateful. They thought that the financial support Caryn had given him recently would buy his loyalty. They believed that when push came to shove, Connor would lie or at least omit the ugly truths to protect the woman who was currently paying his bills. It has been reported by insiders present during the pre-trial motions that Connor begged not to be called. Allegedly, he told Caryn's legal team that he did not want to be involved, that he wanted to stay out of the Roloff madness. But Caryn, perhaps in a moment of arrogance or perhaps out of sheer desperation, insisted. She signed off on the subpoena. She forced her son into that courtroom, believing she could control him the way she has allegedly controlled the narrative at Roloff Farms for years. It was a miscalculation that will likely go down in legal history. The atmosphere in the courtroom yesterday was suffocating. You could cut the tension with a knife. On one side, you had the prosecution looking confident, sitting on a pile of evidence. On the other side, the defense table, where Caryn sat next to her lead attorney. She was dressed in a soft pastel cardigan, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. 2 rows back sat Matt Roloff. Witnesses say Matt looked agitated, constantly checking his watch, his eyes darting around the room. And across the aisle, Amy Roloff sat with Chris Marek. Amy has been stoic throughout this process, but even she looked nervous about what was about to happen. She knows Connor. She knows the volatility of that mother-son dynamic. When the bailiff called out, the defense calls Caryn Chandler. A hush fell over the room. The doors opened and Connor walked in. He didn't look like a man who was there to save his mother. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. He was pale. He was shaking. He was wearing a suit that looked slightly too big for him, and he kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially Caryn. As he passed the defense table, Caryn offered him a small, encouraging smile, a nod that seemed to say, "Stick to the script." Connor did not smile back. He didn't even acknowledge her presence. He walked straight to the witness box, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. That was the first sign that things were about to go wrong. The direct examination began with what lawyers call softball questions. Caryn's attorney, a smooth talker who commands the room, started gently. He wanted to build a rhythm. He wanted to get Connor comfortable so he could deliver the lines they needed. He asked, "State your name for the record." Connor answered, his voice barely a whisper. The judge had to ask him to speak up. The lawyer asked about his background, his childhood, trying to establish that familial bond. He asked, "Mr. Chandler, how would you describe your mother's work ethic?" Connor paused, licking his lips nervously. He said, "She works hard." It wasn't exactly a glowing endorsement, but it was a pass. The lawyer pressed on. "And does she love her grandchildren? Does she care about the Roloff family?" Connor looked down at his hands, which were gripping the edges of the witness box so hard his knuckles were white. "Yes," he said, "she cares about the family." Caryn nodded in the gallery, seemingly satisfied. So far, so good. The strategy was working. They were establishing her as a human being, not a corporate villain. But then the lawyer got greedy. He wanted to tackle the accusations head on. He wanted Connor to specifically deny that Caryn had any deep involvement in the illicit financial dealings of the farm. The lawyer walked closer to the stand, leaning in with a confident smile. He asked the question that would change everything. "Connor, in all of your time around your mother, did she ever discuss the intricate details of the farm finances with you? Did she ever indicate that she was doing anything other than her job?" The room went silent. This was the moment. The expected answer was a simple no. A no would corroborate Caryn's story that she was kept in the dark by Matt. A no would save her. Connor sat there for a long time. The silence stretched for 5 seconds, then 10. Caryn's smile began to fade. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing, silently willing him to speak. Connor took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked up, but he didn't look at the defense lawyer. He didn't look at his mother. He looked directly at the prosecutor. And then he dropped the first bomb. "Yes," Connor said, his voice trembling but clear. "She told me everything." A collective gasp ripped through the courtroom. The defense attorney froze. This was not in the script. This was not the answer he had prepped for. He tried to recover quickly, stammering, "I'm sorry, I don't think you understood the question. I asked if she discussed complex financial details. Connor cut him off. I understood the question, Connor said, his voice gaining strength. She didn't just discuss them. She bragged about them. She told me how she was moving the money. Caryn's face went white. Matt Roloff, sitting in the gallery, dropped his face into his hands. The defense attorney, realizing he was losing control of his own witness, tried to pivot. He tried to object to his own question. He tried to rephrase. He tried to stop the bleeding. But it was too late. The door was open. And once the defense finished their botched examination, practically running back to their table, the prosecutor stood up. You could see the shark-like grin on the prosecutor's face. They hadn't expected this gift, but they were certainly going to unwrap it. The cross-examination was swift and brutal. The prosecutor walked to the center of the room. Mr. Chandler, the prosecutor said, you just stated that your mother told you everything. What exactly did she tell you? The defense attorney jumped up. Objection, hearsay. The judge overruled it. This was a statement against interest. It was admissible. Connor looked at the judge, then back at the prosecutor. She told me that they were skimming cash from the pumpkin season, Connor said. She told me that the negotiations with Zach and Jeremy were rigged from the start. She said they never intended to sell the farm to the boys. She said the price was inflated on purpose so Matt could keep the land and they could sell it for parts later. Pandemonium broke out in the whispers of the gallery. This confirmed every theory, every suspicion that Amy and the kids had held for years. But the prosecutor wasn't done. He knew there was more. He had seen the way Connor was looking at him, the way Connor was sweating. He sensed there was physical evidence. The prosecutor asked, Mr. Chandler, why are you telling us this now? You were subpoenaed by the defense. Why testify against your mother? Connor looked at Caryn then. It was a look of pure heartbreak mixed with anger. Because she tried to buy me, he said. The money she gave me last month, the help with my apartment, it wasn't because she wanted to help me. It was a down payment. She told me if Amy wins, we all end up on the street. Do this for the family. She tried to make me an accomplice. The defense attorney was objecting every 2 seconds now, trying to drown out the testimony, but the judge was having none of it. The judge ordered the witness to continue. The prosecutor then asked the question that led to the most shocking reveal of the entire trial. Mr. Chandler, aside from the money, did your mother give you anything else? Did she give you anything to hold for her? Connor nodded, tears streaming down his face now. Yes, he choked out. Last month, right after the FBI raided the farm office, she came to my apartment in the middle of the night. She was panicking. She had a backpack. A backpack? The prosecutor repeated. And what did she tell you to do with it? She told me to bury it, Connor said. She said, take this to your backyard and bury it deep. If the police come to the farm, they can't find this. If they find this, Matt and I are going to prison. At this point, Caryn Chandler stood up at the defense table. She lost all composure. She screamed, Connor, shut up, you ungrateful brat. Don't you dare! The judge hammered the gavel, shouting, order! Order in the court! The bailiff moved toward Caryn, forcing her back into her seat. Her lawyers were frantically whispering to her, trying to physically restrain her. This was not the behavior of an innocent woman. This was the behavior of someone watching their life implode. Once order was restored, the prosecutor asked the final, devastating question. Mr. Chandler, did you bury the backpack? No, Connor said. I was too scared. I didn't want to go to jail for her. I didn't want to be part of this. So where is the backpack now? The prosecutor asked. Connor pointed a shaking finger toward the evidence table, where a gray, nondescript backpack had been sitting unnoticed since the session began. I gave it to your office this morning, Connor said. It's right there. The courtroom erupted. The prosecutor moved to enter the backpack into evidence. He requested permission to open it then and there. The defense objected to screaming about chain of custody, but the judge overruled them. The backpack had been turned over to the authorities prior to the testimony. It was valid. The prosecutor put on gloves and unzipped the bag. The silence in the room was heavy, oppressive. He reached in and pulled out item number 1, a stack of hard drives. These, Connor explained from the stand, are the backups from the security system, the ones she said were deleted in the surge. Next, the prosecutor pulled out a black ledger book. In this? That's the cash book, Connor said. Every cash transaction from the last 5 pumpkin seasons. Every dollar that didn't get reported to the IRS or the family trust. Finally, the prosecutor pulled out a burner phone. She used that to text Matt when she didn't want a digital trail, Connor testified. She told me the passcode is her birthday. This was the explosion. The defense strategy didn't just fail. It backfired in a way that is almost impossible to recover from. By calling Connor to the stand, Caryn Chandler opened the door to her own destruction. She thought she could manipulate her son one last time. She thought that money and maternal pressure would be enough to silence him. But she underestimated the weight of the burden she placed on him. She underestimated his fear of the law, and perhaps she underestimated his desire to finally be free of the toxic web of the Roloff farm dynamics. The fallout from this testimony is going to be nuclear. We are talking about obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, bribery, and fraud. And this evidence doesn't just implicate Caryn. Connor testified that the backpack was hidden to protect Matt and Caryn. That links Matt Roloff directly to the cover-up. If those hard drives contain what Connor says they contain, we are looking at the end of the Roloff empire as we know it. We are looking at potential prison time, not just civil penalties. As the bailiff escorted a sobbing Connor off the stand, he walked past his mother one last time. Caryn didn't look at him. She was staring blankly at the table, her face a mask of shock and defeat. Matt Roloff had already stormed out of the courtroom before the judge even dismissed the jury, followed closely by his own legal counsel. Amy Roloff sat in the back, holding Chris's hand, looking not triumphant, but deeply sad. This wasn't a victory for anyone. It was a tragedy. A family torn apart by greed, secrets, and a mother who was willing to sacrifice her son's integrity to save her own skin. We have to consider the psychological toll this took on Connor. To sit on a stand and send your mother to prison is a burden no child should have to carry. But the alternative was carrying that backpack, carrying those secrets, and potentially going down with the ship. Connor chose the truth. He chose self-preservation. And in doing so, he blew the lid off the biggest reality TV scandal of the decade. But why now? Why did Connor finally flip? Was it just fear of the FBI, or was there something else? Some insiders are suggesting that Chris Marek played a pivotal role behind the scenes. We saw Chris patting Connor on the back in the hallway. Did Chris and Amy convince Connor that he didn't owe Caryn his loyalty after years of instability? That is the theory gaining traction. It wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was an intervention. We are left with the image of that gray backpack sitting on the evidence table. That backpack is Pandora's box. And now that it is open, there is no closing it. The hard drives, the ledger, the burner phone, these are the keys to the kingdom. We are going to go through the leaked details of what was found on those drives. We have received reports about specific emails between Matt and Caryn regarding the sale of the big house that contradict everything they've said on the show. The story is developing rapidly. The judge has ordered a recess to allow the prosecution to process the new evidence, and the defense is reportedly in chaos, with rumors that Caryn's attorneys are considering resigning due to being misled by their client. You do not want to miss what comes next. Connor Chandler didn't just break the rule of nature. He rewrote the ending of Little People, Big World. Stay tuned. The shockwaves from Connor Chandler's testimony did not stop when the bailiff took possession of that gray backpack. If the reveal of the evidence was the explosion, What followed was the radioactive fallout that is going to poison the ground at Roloff Farms for generations. We need to dissect the specific agonizing details of how Caryn Chandler allegedly tried to orchestrate this cover-up, because the why is just as damning as the what. Connor didn't just wake up one day and decide to destroy his mother. This was the result of a calculated campaign of manipulation that pushed a vulnerable young man too far. To understand why Connor flipped, we have to look closely at the timeline of the financial help Caryn provided. The defense tried to frame this as a mother helping a struggling son. They presented bank transfer records showing thousands of dollars moving from Caryn's personal account to Connor's in the 3 months leading up to the trial. They called it charity. But on cross-examination and in the subsequent redirect, the sinister nature of these payments became clear. Connor testified that for years his mother had been distant. He stated that when he was struggling previously, his calls often went unanswered. But suddenly, coincidentally, right after the grand jury began issuing subpoenas regarding the farm's accounting practices, Caryn reappeared in his life with an open checkbook. Connor described a meeting that took place at a coffee shop in Hillsboro, just a few miles from the farm, about 4 weeks ago. He said Caryn was jittery, constantly looking over her shoulder. She slid an envelope across the table. It wasn't a check, it was cash. $5,000 in $100 bills. Connor testified that he asked her, "Mom, what is this for?" He expected her to say it was for rent or groceries, or to help with his own legal debts. Instead, she leaned in and delivered the line that the prosecution will likely play on repeat during closing arguments. She said, "This is for the family, but being part of this family means protecting this family. If Amy and her lawyers get their way, Matt loses everything. I lose everything, and that means there will be nothing left for you." This wasn't charity, it was a transaction. It was hush money disguised as maternal support. Connor told the jury that he felt sick. He realized that his mother's sudden affection was conditional. It was tied to his silence. She wasn't buying his groceries, she was buying his soul. She was buying his complicity in a felony. And when she handed him that backpack a week later, the transaction was complete. She had paid him, and now she expected him to perform the service, burying the evidence. The emotional weight of that realization is what broke him on the stand. He realized he was just another employee to her, another asset to be managed, just like the pumpkin patch or the mule barn. Now, let's talk about that backpack, the backpack of secrets, as legal analysts are already calling it. While the court has sealed the specific contents pending a forensic review, leaks from inside the clerk's office and whispers from those close to the investigation have given us a terrifyingly clear picture of what is likely on those hard drives and in that ledger. This is not confirmed by the judge yet, but multiple independent sources are corroborating the same details. First, the ledger. This isn't just a notebook. Sources describe it as a detailed shadow book. In any business fraud case, there are usually two sets of books, the ones you show the IRS and the ones that show where the money actually went. This ledger allegedly tracks cash payments from the pumpkin season dating back to 2019. We are talking about admission fees paid in cash, wagon tour tickets, and merchandise sales that never hit the official farm bank accounts. The numbers rumored to be in this book are staggering. Hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned off the top. If this ledger is authenticated, it proves tax evasion on a massive scale. It proves that when Matt told Zach and Jeremy the farm wasn't profitable enough to give them a deal, he was lying. He was allegedly hiding the profit in his pocket, with Caryn keeping the score. Then there are the hard drives. These are believed to be the backups from the proprietary security system Matt installed, the one Amy famously hated. The prosecution believes these drives contain more than just footage of trespassers. They believe the drives contain audio recordings of private conversations. It has long been rumored that Matt bugged the farmhouse to listen to Amy's divorce strategy sessions. If those files are on these drives, it elevates this case from financial fraud to illegal wiretapping, which carries serious federal prison time. Connor's testimony that Caryn specifically told him these drives were supposed to be deleted suggests she knew exactly what was on them. She knew they contained the smoking gun that proved they were spying on the family. But the most damaging piece of evidence might be the burner phone. Connor testified that Caryn used this phone exclusively to text Matt about the sensitive stuff. Why would a couple who lives together and works together need a burner phone to communicate? Because they knew their main phones might be subpoenaed. They knew digital forensics could recover deleted texts from their iPhones. But a burner phone? That's something drug dealers use. That implies a level of criminal intent that destroys the naive girlfriend defense. Connor provided the passcode, which means the FBI is currently reading every text message sent between Matt and Caryn during the most critical moments of the negotiation with the twins. We are expecting texts that coordinate the lowball offers to Zach, texts that mock Amy's intelligence, and texts that explicitly discuss hiding assets. This phone is the narrator of their alleged crimes. The immediate reaction in the courtroom when the backpack was opened was chaotic, but the most significant moment happened at the defense table. We need to focus on Caryn's lead attorney. This is a man with a reputation to protect. He is a high-powered, expensive lawyer who does not lose. As Connor was detailing the contents of the backpack, the evidence his client had sworn did not exist, the color drained from the attorney's face. In the legal world, there is a strict line. A lawyer can defend a guilty person, but a lawyer cannot knowingly allow a client to commit perjury or obstruct justice. By hiding the existence of this evidence and then putting Connor on the stand to lie about her character, Caryn had effectively made her lawyer an accessory to her crime. She had duped him. Minutes after the cross-examination ended, while the jury was still buzzing, Caryn's lawyer, stood up. He didn't look at Caryn. He looked at the judge and said, "Your Honor, in light of this witness's testimony and the introduction of this new evidence, defense counsel has an ethical conflict that cannot be waived. I must request an immediate recess to confer with my client regarding my continued representation." That is legal speak for "I quit." He was firing her. Right there in open court, he knew that if he stayed on the case after knowing she tried to bribe a witness to hide evidence, he could be disbarred. The judge granted a 20-minute recess. When they returned, the lead attorney was packing his briefcase. He formally moved to withdraw as counsel. The judge granted the motion, leaving Caryn Chandler sitting alone at the defense table. It was a humiliating visual. The woman who thought she was the smartest person in the room, the woman who thought she could outmaneuver the entire Roloff family, was suddenly abandoned, isolated, and defenseless. She looked small. She looked terrified. For the first time, the reality of prison seemed to settle on her shoulders. And where was Matt Roloff during this meltdown? As we mentioned, he left the courtroom, but sources say the scene in the hallway was even more dramatic. Matt wasn't just angry, he was in a state of panic. He was seen huddled in a corner with his own legal team who were frantically making phone calls. The burner phone links him to everything. Connor's testimony that the backpack was hidden to save Matt and Caryn destroys his plausible deniability. Up until yesterday, Matt's defense was that Caryn was a rogue operator, or that the accusations were just bitter family drama. Now, he is directly tied to a conspiracy to tamper with evidence. Witnesses describe Matt as red-faced, sweating, and snapping at his paralegals. He knows that the shield Caryn provided, the idea that she was the buffer, is gone. She is no longer a shield, she is an anchor, and she is dragging him down to the bottom of the ocean. Let's go back to Connor. The image of him leaving the courtroom is one that will stick with everyone who was there. He wasn't triumphant. He didn't look like a man who had just won a victory. He looked broken. He had just publicly destroyed his mother. No matter what she did, that is a trauma that doesn't go away. As he exited the double doors, stumbling slightly, he was met not by Matt, not by his siblings, but by Chris Marek. This detail is crucial. Chris Marek has often been the quiet observer in this saga, the outsider who married into the chaos. But yesterday, he stepped up as the father figure Connor never really had. Witnesses say Chris didn't say a word at first. He just stepped forward and placed a firm hand on Connor's shoulder. It was a grounding gesture. Connor collapsed into him, sobbing. Chris steered him away from the cameras, away from the prying eyes of the press, and led him toward a private conference room. Amy followed close behind, wiping tears from her own eyes. This moment signifies a massive shift in the family dynamic. The sides have been redrawn. It is no longer Matt and Caryn versus Amy. It is the truth versus the lie. And Connor, the boy who was supposed to be on Team Caryn, has just defected to Team Truth, guided by the steady hand of Chris Marek. This betrayal, or rather this act of bravery, changes the trajectory of the entire trial. With the backpack and evidence, the prosecution's case has gone from strong to invincible. They don't just have circumstantial evidence anymore. They have the receipts. They have the hard drives. They have the confession of the co-conspirator's son. Caryn is now facing a terrifying choice. With her lawyer gone and the evidence mounting, she has very few options left. She can try to find a new lawyer who is willing to take on a sinking ship, which will cost a fortune and take time she doesn't have. Or she can do the one thing that Matt Roloff fears most. She can cut a deal. Think about it. Caryn is looking at potential years in prison for obstruction of justice and fraud. She is alone. Matt is protecting himself. Her son has turned on her. If the prosecutor offers her a plea deal, reduced time in exchange for testifying against Matt, will she take it? Connor's testimony proves she has no loyalty when her own survival is at risk. She tried to sacrifice Connor to save herself. Why wouldn't she sacrifice Matt? The narrative of Matt and Caryn against the world died yesterday in that courtroom. It is now every person for themselves. And Matt Roloff has the most to lose. He has the land, the assets, the reputation. Caryn was the manager, but Matt was the architect. If Caryn decides to flip, if she decides to corroborate everything Connor said and add her own details from the last 10 years, Matt Roloff isn't just looking at losing the farm, he is looking at losing his freedom. The judge has ordered the trial to resume in 48 hours to give Caryn time to find new counsel. But legal experts are predicting that the trial might not even restart. We might be looking at a plea bargaining phase. The district attorney knows they have the upper hand. They are likely drafting the offer right now. Tell us everything about Matt's finances. Tell us where the rest of the money is, and we will go easy on you. For a woman who values her lifestyle and her freedom as much as Caryn seems to, that is a tempting offer. But there is one more twist to this family destroyed arc. We have to consider the rest of the Roloff children. Zach and Jeremy were not in the courtroom yesterday. They have stayed away, likely to protect their own mental health and their families. But news travels fast. How do you think they are reacting to the news that their stepmother figure tried to bribe their stepbrother to hide evidence that they were being cheated? This vindicates everything Zach said on the show. When Zach said, "The north side of the farm is dead to me, and I don't trust my dad," he was painted by some fans as being a brat. Connor's testimony proves Zach was right. It proves his instincts were spot on. He sensed the rot at the core of the negotiation. This testimony is the ultimate "I told you so," but it is a bitter one. It confirms that his father valued a few $100,000 more than his relationship with his sons. The impact of this reaches beyond the courtroom. TLC is currently filming. The cameras were not allowed inside the court, but they were outside. They filmed Connor leaving with Chris. They filmed Matt storming out. They filmed the lawyer quitting. This footage is going to be the climax of the next season, if the show even survives this. How can TLC continue to broadcast a show about a wholesome farm family when the matriarch and patriarch are embroiled in a criminal conspiracy of this magnitude? The network is likely having emergency meetings right now. Do they cancel the show? Do they pivot the narrative to a true crime documentary style? Connor Chandler didn't just break his mother, he might have broken the entire Little People, Big World franchise. As we look toward the next 48 hours, the suspense is unbearable. Will Caryn find a lawyer? Will she take a plea deal? And what exactly is on those hard drives that made her so desperate she was willing to bribe her own son? We are going to dive into the specifics of the burner phone texts that have just been leaked to us by a source very close to the investigation. We're talking about screen grabs of text conversations that show the exact moment the decision was made to screw over the twins. You need to hear the language used. It is colder and more calculated than you can imagine. This is a Shakespearean tragedy playing out in real time. A mother betrayed her son because she betrayed him first. A father watching his empire crumble because of his own greed. And a gray backpack that holds the power to send them all to prison. The farm will never be the same. The family will never be the same. And after what we are going to reveal next, your view of Matt and Caryn will never recover. Stay with us. The darkest secrets are yet to come. We promised you the contents of that burner phone, and we delivered. While the courtroom doors are currently closed as Caryn Chandler scrambles to find legal representation that won't walk out on her, the flow of information has not stopped. In fact, it has turned into a flood. Sources deeply embedded within the investigation, individuals who have seen the preliminary forensic reports from that gray backpack, have leaked the substance of the text messages found on the device Connor Chandler handed over. And if you thought Connor's testimony was damaging, these texts are the death knell for Matt Roloff's reputation as a benevolent father, grandfather. The burner phone, an outdated model specifically chosen for its lack of cloud connectivity, contained a thread of messages between a number identified as boss and one identified as CC. The timestamps on these messages correspond perfectly with the tumultuous period when Zach and Jeremy were attempting to purchase the farm. We have all seen the episodes. We saw the heartbreak on Zach's face when he said the offer didn't make sense. We saw Matt shrugging, claiming he gave them a family discount. These texts suggest that the family discount was a complete fabrication. According to our sources, one text from CC to boss, dated 3 days before the sit-down meeting with Zach, reads, "The appraisal came in at the lower number. Do we show him?" The response from boss, allegedly Matt, is chilling. It reads, "No, bury it. We use the inflated projection. If he can't match the market rate we set, he walks. I'm not giving this away." Let that sink in. Bury it. I'm not giving this away. This contradicts years of Matt claiming that his dream was to pass the farm to his kids. These texts paint a picture of a man who viewed his own children not as heirs, but as customers, and customers he was trying to price gouge. Another exchange is even more personal. It discusses Amy. Caryn allegedly texted, she's asking questions about the wagon tour cash. She thinks the numbers are light. Matt's alleged response, she doesn't know how to read a P&L. Distract her, tell her we had higher maintenance costs this year, she'll buy it. This is the naive victim, Caryn Chandler, plotting to gaslight Amy Roloff. This is the woman who sat on the witness stand or was about to and claimed she just did what she was told. These texts prove she was an active participant in the deception. She wasn't just following orders, she was suggesting strategies. She was the one managing the distraction. This destroys the defense that she was just a glorified secretary. She was the co-conspirator. But the most heartbreaking text, the one that is reportedly circulating among the Roloff siblings right now, concerns the sale of the big house. We all remember the drama of the big house going on the market, then becoming a rental, a text from the burner phone sent after the deal with the boys fell through allegedly reads, "Plan B is better anyway. We short-term rent it, keep the equity, and the kids get nothing until we're gone. It's our retirement, not their handout." Not their handout. That phrase is going to haunt this family forever. It reveals a deep-seated resentment Matt apparently holds toward his own children, a feeling that they are entitled and undeserving. And Caryn was right there cheering him on, reinforcing that narrative so she could secure her own bag. These digital receipts are irrefutable. You can argue about memory, you can argue about interpretation of a conversation, but you cannot argue with a time-stamped text message that explicitly outlines a plan to defraud your family. The release of these details has shifted the ground beneath everyone's feet. We need to talk about the vindication of Zach Roloff. For the past 2 years, a significant portion of the fan base has turned on Zach. They called him lazy. They called him entitled. They said he was throwing a tantrum because daddy wouldn't give him a multi-million-dollar property for free. Zach took that heat. He moved his family to Battleground. He distanced himself. He said, famously, "The North Side is dead to me." He hinted that the way the meeting went down was disrespectful and shady. Today, Zach Roloff stands as the most credible person in this entire saga. He wasn't being a brat, he was being smart. He smelled a rat. He realized that the numbers his father was presenting didn't add up. He realized that Caryn was sitting in that meeting not as a mediator, but as an adversary. These texts prove that his gut instinct was 100% correct. He saved his family, Tori and the kids, from entering into a financial agreement that was rigged to fail. He walked away from a trap. And while it is a victory for his reputation, it is a hollow victory. Imagine realizing that your father, the man who built a playground for you, the man who filmed every moment of your childhood, was actively plotting to squeeze every dime out of you. That is a wound that never heals. And what about Jeremy? Jeremy and Audrey have been building their own empire, staying relatively quiet on the farm drama. But sources say Jeremy is livid. He feels betrayed, not just financially, but spiritually. Jeremy places a high value on legacy and heritage. To find out that the legacy was being sold to the highest bidder or hidden in a gray backpack is a slap in the face to everything he preaches. We are hearing reports that Jeremy has already contacted his own legal counsel to see if he can join the prosecution as a victim, or at least to ensure that the family trust is locked down so Matt can't liquidate anything else. The brothers, who have had their own differences, are now united by a common enemy, the deception of their father and his girlfriend. This brings us back to the courtroom in the empty chair at the defense table. Caryn Chandler is currently the loneliest woman in Oregon. Her son has disowned her. Her lawyer has fired her. Her boyfriend is likely looking for a bus to throw her under. We have to analyze her options because the clock is ticking. The judge gave her 8 hours. That time is almost up. Legal experts weighing in on the case agree on one thing. Caryn is the weak link. The prosecution knows this. They don't really want Caryn, they want Matt. Matt is the big fish. He is the face of the franchise, the owner of the assets. Caryn is just the accomplice. This creates a classic prisoner's dilemma. If Caryn stays silent, she goes down for obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and fraud. She goes to prison, likely for 3 to 5 years, given the severity of bribing a witness. But if she flips, if she walks into that DA's office tomorrow and says, "I will authenticate every text, I will explain the ledger, and I will testify that Matt directed me to do it," she could walk away with probation. Does Caryn Chandler love Matt Roloff enough to go to prison for him? Does she love him enough to lose her freedom, her reputation, and her relationship with her son just to protect his farm? Based on the behavior we've seen, the panic, the screaming in court, the desperation to hide evidence, the answer is likely no. Caryn is a survivor. She looks out for Caryn, and right now Matt Roloff is a liability. We predict that before the trial resumes, a deal will be announced. We predict that Caryn will turn state's evidence, and when she does, the floodgates will open. She knows where all the bodies are buried because, as Connor testified, she helped dig the graves. This leaves Matt Roloff in a position of absolute ruin. It is hard to overstate how far he has fallen. He spent 20 years cultivating an image of the hardworking, overcoming hero. The little person with the big dreams, the architect, the visionary. Now, the world sees him as a schemer, a man who put profit over paternity. If Caryn turns on him, he will be facing a federal indictment. The IRS will be involved because of the cash ledger. The FBI is already involved because of the wiretapping and witness tampering. The farm, the land that started it all, will likely be seized to pay for restitution and legal fees. The Roloff Farms sign, which has been an icon for 2 decades, might soon be taken down, sold off in an auction to pay for the crimes of its owner. And finally, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, TLC. Little People, Big World is one of the longest-running reality shows in history. It is built on the premise of wholesome family values, overcoming adversity, and the unique challenges of the Roloff family. How can that show exist now? How can you air a season premiere featuring pumpkin season when we know that pumpkin season was the scene of a crime? How can you have confessionals with Matt talking about the future when his future is likely a prison cell? Insider reports suggest that production has been halted indefinitely. The cameras that were rolling have been shut down. TLC Legal is undoubtedly going through every contract, looking for the morality clause that allows them to terminate the relationship. This isn't just a scandal, it's a brand killer. You cannot sell at space for diapers and minivans on a show about felony fraud. The likely outcome is that the show is canceled, effective immediately. We may never see the footage of this fallout. The series finale won't be a tearful goodbye at a wedding. It will be a news report about a sentencing hearing. The tragic irony is that the show that gave them everything, the fame, the money, the platform, also gave them the rope to hang themselves. The pressure to keep the drama high, to keep the money flowing, to keep the storylines interesting, likely fueled the greed that led to this moment. Connor Chandler, the young man who sat in that witness box with his head in his hands, is the unlikely hero of this tragedy. He didn't just expose a crime, he broke a cycle. He stopped the manipulation. He refused to let the toxicity of the older generation corrupt his future. It came at a terrible cost, but he did the right thing. He chose truth over loyalty to a lie. And in the end, that is the only legacy worth having. As we wait for the court to reconvene, the atmosphere is electric. We are witnessing the dismantling of a reality TV dynasty in real time. The backpack of secrets has done its job. The truth is out. The only question left is, how long will Matt and Caryn get? And will they be in the same prison? Or will they be separated, left to think about the family they destroyed for a few extra dollars? This story is far from over. The legal maneuvers in the next few days will determine the fate of everyone involved. We will be here tracking every motion, every leak, and every statement. We are keeping a close watch on the courthouse. And as soon as that plea deal is announced, or as soon as the handcuffs go on, you will be the first to know. Do you think Caryn will take the deal and testify against Matt? Or do you think she will go down with the ship? And what about Zach and Jeremy? Should they sue their father for what was revealed in those texts? I want to hear your theories in the comments below. This is a conversation we need to have. Don't forget to like this video. It helps the algorithm show this truth to more fans who have been deceived. And please hit that subscribe button. We are working on a special report detailing the forensic accountant's analysis of the shadow ledger, and you do not want to miss the numbers we have found. Until next time, keep your eyes open, because in the world of the Roloffs, nothing is what it seems.